For over a century, the Philippines has stood as a frontline witness to the evolving power of typhoons. In the early 1900s, historical records show an average of 15 to 20 tropical cyclones entering the Philippine area of responsibility each year. While many storms made landfall, most were moderate in strength, with only a handful reaching the level of devastation we see today. As the decades passed, scientific studies began to track not only the frequency, but also the intensity of these storms. The 1970s and 1980s saw a noticeable uptick in the number of typhoons making landfall, coinciding with improved weather monitoring and reporting systems. However, it is in recent decades that a more worrying trend has emerged. While the overall number of cyclones per year has remained relatively steady, the proportion of stronger, more destructive typhoons has increased. Researchers point to rising sea surface temperatures and changing climate patterns as likely contributors. Warmer oceans provide more energy for storms, fueling their intensity. Notably, the 2010s stand out for a series of super typhoons, each breaking records for wind speed and rainfall. The years 2013 and 2020, in particular, brought some of the most catastrophic storms in living memory. Despite advances in forecasting and disaster preparedness, the growing strength of these typhoons presents new challenges for the archipelago. This evolving pattern is not just a matter of numbers, it's a story of adaptation, resilience, and the urgent need to understand our changing world. The Philippines is often called the world's typhoon belt, but what makes this archipelago so vulnerable to such powerful storms? The answer lies in its geography. Nestled in Southeast Asia, the Philippines sits at the western edge of the vast Pacific Ocean. This position places it directly in the main path of tropical cyclones that form over the warm waters of the western Pacific, the most active typhoon basin on the planet. Warm ocean currents here act as fuel, providing the energy needed for storms to intensify rapidly as they approach land. The country's unique shape, a string of over 7,000 islands, means that almost no region is spared. From Luzon in the north to Mindanao in the south, every island faces the threat of landfall. The surrounding seas and complex coastline can also amplify storm surges and flooding. Adding to this, the Philippines sits within the Pacific Ring of Fire, a zone not only prone to earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, but also marked by shifting weather patterns and atmospheric disturbances. Here, the convergence of oceanic and atmospheric forces creates the perfect breeding ground for typhoons. It is this intersection of geography, ocean currents, and climate that has earned the Philippines its title as the world's typhoon belt, where nature's most powerful storms are both a constant threat and an inescapable part of life. When does a typhoon become a super typhoon? The answer lies in the raw power of nature, measured by precise science. A regular typhoon is already a formidable force, but a super typhoon is in a class of its own, defined by extraordinary wind speeds, intense low pressure, and perfect storm conditions. The key difference begins with wind speed. Meteorologists classify a storm as a super typhoon when its sustained winds reach at least 185 kilometers per hour, or about 115 miles per hour. At this velocity, the storm can uproot trees, flatten homes, and send debris hurtling through the air with deadly force. But wind is only part of the story. Super typhoons draw their strength from the sea, specifically warm sea surface temperatures. When ocean waters exceed 26.5 degrees Celsius, they provide the energy needed for storms to intensify rapidly. The warmer the water, the more fuel for the typhoon's engine. Atmospheric pressure also plays a crucial role. As a storm strengthens, its central pressure drops dramatically. The lower the pressure, the more violent the winds. In a super typhoon, this pressure can plunge below 900 millibars, creating a vacuum effect that accelerates air inward and upward, feeding the storm's ferocity. Other meteorological factors, like moist air, minimal wind shear, and favorable upper atmosphere conditions, help super typhoons grow even stronger. These elements combine to create a perfect storm, a massive, swirling system with a calm, eerie eye at its center and absolute chaos all around. It is this combination of speed, heat, pressure, and atmosphere that transforms an ordinary typhoon into a super typhoon, one of nature's most awe-inspiring and destructive forces. Today, the science of tracking typhoons is a global effort, one that saves countless lives across the Philippines and beyond. At the heart of this mission stands PAGASA, the Philippine Atmospheric, Geophysical, and Astronomical Services Administration. Working round the clock, Pajasa's meteorologists monitor the sky and sea, using a blend of local expertise and cutting-edge technology. Modern satellites orbit high above, scanning the vast Pacific for developing storms. These eyes in the sky capture real-time images, measure wind speeds, and track cloud formations as they swirl across the ocean. Data from American, Japanese, and European satellites feeds directly into forecasting centers, providing crucial updates every few minutes. But satellites are only the beginning. Doppler radar stations across the Philippines scan the horizon for approaching storms, tracking rainfall and wind patterns with pinpoint accuracy. Computer models, powered by supercomputers, process this information, projecting a storm's path, intensity, and potential impact days in advance. International agencies like the Joint Typhoon Warning Center and Japan Meteorological Agency work alongside Pagasa, sharing forecasts and warnings. This collaboration ensures that no storm goes unnoticed, and that communities receive timely, accurate information. Perhaps most vital of all are the early warning systems. Text alerts, radio broadcasts, and social media updates reach millions, giving families precious hours to prepare or evacuate. With every storm, these technologies evolve, improving disaster preparedness and reducing tragedy. Thanks to these advances, the Philippines faces each typhoon season with sharper foresight and stronger defenses. The science of storm tracking stands as a silent guardian, watching the skies so that lives may be protected on the ground. When Super Typhoon Yolanda, known internationally as Haiyan, struck the Philippines in November 2013, the world watched in stunned disbelief. With sustained winds of over 300 kilometers per hour, Yolanda became one of the most powerful tropical cyclones ever recorded. The devastation was immense, entire communities flattened, infrastructure swept away, and over 6,000 lives lost. But how does Yolanda's impact compare to other catastrophic storms around the globe? Let's look at Hurricane Katrina, which ravaged the southern United States in 2005. Katrina's storm surge overwhelmed New Orleans levees, leaving vast areas underwater and displacing hundreds of thousands. The economic toll soared to over $125 billion, with more than 1,800 lives lost. In contrast, while Yolanda's death toll was much higher, the economic loss, though staggering, was lower in absolute terms, reflecting differences in wealth, infrastructure, and vulnerability. Elsewhere, storms like Cyclone Nargis in Myanmar and Typhoon Morakot in Taiwan have also left deep scars, but Yolanda's ferocity and the scale of destruction placed it among the most severe disasters of the modern era. What set the Philippines' response apart was the immense challenge of geography, isolated islands, shattered roads, and disrupted communications hampered relief efforts. The world responded swiftly, with humanitarian aid pouring in from every continent, yet the logistical hurdles were immense. In the aftermath, the Philippines faced not just the task of rebuilding homes, but of healing communities and restoring hope. The government, local organizations, and international partners worked together, learning vital lessons in disaster management, lessons echoed in the responses to Katrina and other global calamities. Today, the recovery from Yolanda stands as both a warning and a testament, a warning of nature's power and a testament to the resilience and solidarity of people facing the worst storms imaginable. In the Pacific lies the Philippines, a nation of over 7,000 islands, renowned for its beauty and biodiversity, but its location places it directly in the path of the world's most powerful storms, typhoons. Each year, about 20 tropical cyclones cross these islands, shaping both the land and the people. Some storms are so fierce, they leave scars that last for generations. In this journey, we revisit the most devastating typhoons in Philippine history, exploring their force, impact, and the stories of survival. This is not just a chronicle of weather, but a testament to the enduring spirit of a people who rebuild and remember. Our story begins in 1881, before modern forecasting, when a monstrous cyclone struck the Philippines. Known as the Haiphong Typhoon, it unleashed winds rivaling today's strongest hurricanes and swept across the central and northern islands. The true terror was the storm surge, a wall of seawater that swallowed coastal communities with little warning. Around 20,000 lives were lost, making it one of the deadliest cyclones in world history. The devastation was so immense it became legend, a haunting reminder of the Pacific's destructive power. Haipong set a grim benchmark for the storms that would follow. By 1995, meteorology had advanced, but nature's fury still overwhelmed. Super Typhoon Angela, or Rosing, struck Catanduanes with winds of 260 kilometers per hour, then tore through the Bicol region. Buildings were shredded, forests stripped, and floods and landslides compounded the disaster. Even Metro Manila was plunged into darkness as the storm battered the capital. Over 900 people died, and the damage reached billions of pesos. Angela proved that even with technology, a powerful typhoon could bring a nation to its knees. It remains one of the most intense storms ever to hit the Philippines. The lesson: preparation saves lives, but some storms defy all defenses. In 1998, Super Typhoon Zeb, or Iliong, battered northern Luzon. Though weakened from its peak, Zeb's vast size brought punishing winds and historic rainfall. The Cordillera Mountains, saturated by relentless rain, unleashed deadly landslides that buried entire communities. Rivers overflowed, flooding the plains and displacing hundreds of thousands. The official death toll was 83, but many remain missing, lost to the mudflows. Zeb showed that a typhoon's danger is not just wind, but water and earth, reshaped by the storm. Its legacy is carved into the mountains of Luzon. In 2006, Typhoon Reming struck the Bicol region, colliding with the slopes of Mayon volcano. The storm's torrential rain saturated millions of tons of volcanic debris, triggering catastrophic lahars, rivers of mud and rock. Entire villages were buried in minutes, and the landscape was transformed into a wasteland. Over 1,300 people were killed or went missing, most swallowed by the mudflows. Reming was a horrifying lesson in how typhoons can weaponize the very ground, turning a volcano into an agent of destruction. The devastation was absolute, with homes, schools, and churches erased. The tragedy revealed the deadly interplay between weather and geology. In Bicol, the scars of Reming remain. Typhoon Frank, or Fengshan, in 2008, took an erratic path across the central Philippines, bringing destructive winds and severe flooding. The greatest tragedy unfolded at sea. The passenger ferry MV Princess of the Stars sailed into the storm and capsized, claiming over 800 lives. On land, rivers overflowed, towns were submerged, and hundreds of thousands fled their homes. The disaster exposed the perils of underestimating a typhoon's power and the critical importance of safety decisions. Frank's legacy is defined by both the devastation on land and one of the deadliest maritime disasters in Philippine history. It was a stark reminder that nature's fury can strike anywhere, on land or at sea. The lessons of Frank echo in every storm since. In 2010, Super Typhoon Megi, or Juan, became one of the most powerful cyclones ever to make landfall. It slammed into Isabela with winds of 285 kilometers per hour, flattening crops and snapping concrete poles. The agricultural heartland was devastated, but timely evacuations kept the death toll to 69. The storm's force was apocalyptic, stripping forests bare and destroying infrastructure. Yet, the low loss of life showed the value of preparation and early warnings. Megi's destruction was immense, but its lessons saved lives. It stands as a benchmark for both intensity and disaster response. In 2012, Typhoon Pablo shattered Mindanao's sense of safety from major storms. Pablo made landfall as a Category 5 super typhoon, flattening towns and banana plantations in Davao Oriental and Compostela Valley. Flash floods and landslides swept away entire communities, especially in mining areas. Over 1,100 people died or went missing, and the destruction was nearly total. Pablo was a brutal awakening. No part of the Philippines is immune to extreme weather. The storm's impact changed Mindanao's landscape and mindset forever. It was a tragic lesson in vulnerability and preparedness. In 2013, Super Typhoon Yolanda, or Haiyan, became the benchmark for devastation. With winds of 315 kilometers per hour, it obliterated entire cities, especially Tacloban, and unleashed a storm surge over 6 meters high. The surge swept inland like a tsunami, erasing coastal districts and leaving unimaginable destruction. Over 6,300 people died, thousands went missing, and millions were left homeless. Yolanda was more than a disaster. It was a humanitarian crisis that exposed the vulnerability of coastal populations. The world watched as the Philippines struggled to recover. Yolanda's name is now synonymous with absolute devastation. It forced a global reckoning with the realities of climate change and disaster preparedness. The scars of Yolanda remain, but so does the resolve to rebuild. In 2018, Super Typhoon Ompong, or Mangkhut, struck northern Luzon with massive winds and torrential rain. The storm triggered deadly landslides in the mining town of Itagon, burying dozens. Agriculture was devastated as crops were flattened just before harvest, threatening food security. Extensive evacuations saved many lives, but the economic toll was immense. Ompong was a powerful reminder that typhoons threaten not just lives, but livelihoods. The compound dangers of wind, water, and earth were on full display. The region's resilience was tested once again. In 2020, Super Typhoon Raleigh, or Goni, made landfall in Catanduanes with winds matching Haiyan's record. The island was cut off, infrastructure destroyed, and communities devastated. In Albay, torrential rains triggered lahars from Mayon volcano, burying homes in volcanic mud. Despite the storm's record intensity, mass evacuations kept the death toll in the dozens. Raleigh was a storm of extremes, unmatched power, but also a testament to the life-saving impact of preparation. The material destruction was near total in some areas. Raleigh's story is one of both tragedy and hope. It underscored the importance of heeding warnings and acting swiftly. In December 2021, Super Typhoon Odette, or Rai, rapidly intensified and struck Siargao, Dinagat, and the Visayas. Winds of 260 kilometers per hour decimated palm forests and tourist infrastructure, leaving islands in ruins. The storm's path of destruction spanned multiple provinces, causing blackouts, floods, and landslides. Over 400 people died, and millions were affected. Odette highlighted the vulnerability of island communities and the challenge of disaster response across a vast archipelago. The humanitarian crisis that followed was immense. Odette was a stark reminder that super typhoons can strike at any time. In 2023, Super Typhoon Ige, or Doksuri, struck the Babuyan Islands and unleashed days of relentless rain across Luzon. The storm's main impact was not wind, but widespread, prolonged flooding caused by the enhanced southwest monsoon. Rivers overflowed, submerging towns and farmlands and forcing tens of thousands to evacuate. The economic and social disruption was immense, with billions in damage. Ige showed that a typhoon's danger isn't just its eye, but the broader effects, like monsoon rains, that can devastate millions. The floods lingered for weeks, testing the nation's resilience. Ige's legacy is a warning about the evolving threats of climate and weather. In 2009, Typhoon Pepeng, internationally known as Parma, became one of the most persistent and destructive storms to strike the Philippines. Making landfall multiple times, Pepeng stalled over northern Luzon, unleashing relentless rains that triggered catastrophic landslides and flooding. Entire villages in Benguet and Pangasinan were buried or submerged, with roads and bridges swept away, isolating communities for days. The storm claimed hundreds of lives and left tens of thousands homeless, compounding the devastation just weeks after Typhoon Ondoy. Pepeng's slow, punishing path highlighted the dangers of prolonged rainfall and the vulnerability of mountainous regions. Its legacy underscored the urgent need for improved disaster preparedness and early warning systems, prompting significant changes in the nation's approach to typhoon response and recovery. In July 2014, Typhoon Glenda, internationally known as Ramasan, swept across the Philippines with ferocious winds and torrential rain. Making landfall in the Bicol region, Glenda quickly intensified, battering Luzon's southern provinces and the densely populated Metro Manila. The storm toppled thousands of power lines and uprooted trees, plunging millions into darkness for days. In its wake, Glenda left a trail of destruction, over 100 lives lost, tens of thousands of homes damaged, and widespread disruption to transport and communication networks. What set Glenda apart was not just its strength, but its timing, striking less than a year after the devastation of Typhoon Haiyan. Communities still recovering from previous disasters now faced fresh challenges, with farmers losing crops and families once again seeking shelter. Yet Glenda also marked a turning point in disaster response. Improved early warning systems and coordinated evacuations saved countless lives, reflecting hard-learned lessons from storms past. Typhoon Glenda's legacy is a reminder that while nature's fury is unpredictable, preparedness, unity, and resilience remain the Philippines' strongest defenses. In November 2020, as the nation grappled with the ongoing pandemic, Typhoon Ulysses, known internationally as Vamco, struck the Philippines with devastating force. Arriving just days after Super Typhoon Goni, Ulysses unleashed relentless rain and fierce winds, triggering catastrophic floods across Luzon, including Metro Manila and the neighboring provinces. Rivers burst their banks, submerging entire communities and forcing thousands onto rooftops, awaiting rescue in the dead of night. The storm claimed over 100 lives and displaced hundreds of thousands, with the Marikina River reaching levels not seen since the infamous Typhoon Ondoy in 2009. Roads became rivers, power and communication lines collapsed, and the nation watched in anguish as images of submerged homes and desperate families spread across social media. Yet amidst the chaos, stories of heroism and solidarity emerged. Volunteers braved treacherous waters to save stranded neighbors, and communities banded together to provide relief despite their own losses. Ulysses exposed the vulnerabilities of urban planning and flood management, reigniting urgent calls for sustainable solutions and climate resilience. In the annals of Philippine typhoon history, Typhoon Ulysses stands as a stark reminder. The threat of extreme weather is ever present, but so too is the extraordinary capacity of Filipinos to endure, adapt, and rise above even the deepest floods. In the summer of 1983, as the monsoon season deepened, Typhoon Uwan swept across the Philippines, its name now a faint echo in the nation's collective memory, yet its impact was profound. Unlike the more infamous storms, Uwan did not roar with record-breaking winds, but with days of relentless rain. Over the course of a week, vast swathes of central and northern Luzon were inundated, as swollen rivers burst their banks and landslides thundered down mountain slopes. Entire villages in Pangasinan and Tarlac were submerged, crops were washed away, and thousands found themselves displaced with little warning. The agricultural devastation triggered food shortages that rippled through local economies for months. While the official death toll was lower than some of the more catastrophic typhoons, the long-term hardship endured by rural communities was immense. For many, the memory of Uwan is tied to the silent struggle of rebuilding lives in the shadow of disaster, often overlooked in the broader narrative of Philippine resilience. Yet, Typhoon Uwan left its mark, not just in the muddy silt that covered fields, but in the growing recognition of the need for improved flood control and disaster preparedness. It was a turning point that quietly seeded future reforms, reminding the nation that not all disasters come with howling winds. Sometimes, the most devastating arrive as a steady, unending rain. Fast forward to the present, and the name Uwan has returned to headlines, this time as Super Typhoon Uwan, one of the most powerful storms to strike the Philippines in recent years. Unlike its 1983 predecessor, the latest Uwan brought not only torrential rain, but also record-breaking winds, with gusts exceeding 250 kilometers per hour as it made landfall. In terms of intensity, Super Typhoon Uwan has drawn comparisons to Typhoon Haiyan, Yolanda, in 2013, which remains the deadliest on record, and Typhoon Raleigh, Goni, in 2020, known for its ferocious winds. However, Uwan's path and slow movement led to catastrophic flooding in both urban and rural areas, echoing the devastation of the 1983 storm, but on a much larger scale. The latest reports indicate that over 1.5 million people have been affected, with thousands still in evacuation centers and widespread damage to infrastructure, agriculture, and livelihoods. Experts warn that the increasing frequency and intensity of super typhoons like Uwan are linked to climate change, underscoring the urgent need for stronger disaster preparedness and climate adaptation measures. As the nation recovers, the story of Uwan, both past and present, serves as a stark reminder of the Philippines' vulnerability, but also its enduring spirit and capacity to adapt in the face of ever-stronger storms. From Haiphong to Odette and Igay, the Philippines' story is inseparable from the typhoon. Each storm leaves scars, but also reveals the resilience and unity of its people. In every aftermath, neighbors help neighbors, and communities rebuild from the ruins. As climate change fuels stronger storms, the challenge grows. Yet, history proves the Filipino spirit is unbroken, enduring, hopeful, and ready to face whatever comes next. The future is uncertain, but the will to survive and rebuild remains a force of nature.